The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, the group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont of HawaiiTracker.com, bringing you guys another Hawaiian volcano tracker update. Today is Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, 5 p.m., and we're talking about Maunaloa today for the most part. Dane, it's not been a lot of change since yesterday. The flow seemed to surge forward overnight towards the Saddle Road a little bit, but it's really slowed down over the course of the day today. And where the lava's coming out of the ground at the fissures is more or less the same. Maybe some slight fluctuations there, but there's some other things happening in our community that have caused some, we'll call it alert today, right? Oh, I can't hear you.
Yes, so we had, oh, did we just drop?
No, I don't think so, did we?
Oh, sorry. All right, well, I'm gonna continue anyways then. Yeah, they're on the island earlier this morning. A bunch of people reported a loud explosion being around the island, even out to hear reports from Maui. And that would later be determined to be a sonic boom, we would find out. But it really freaked a lot of people out, and it kind of the hornet's nest, which internet. So that really is kind of taken away a little bit of focus from the Maunaloa eruption today. and added a little bit to the anxiety. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely that sonic boom is something I want to keep an eye on. So, yeah, we'll maybe just jump right into it and try to keep it brief. I know everyone's probably overloaded on Maunaloa information, so we want to make sure we give you the relevant info so you can understand what's going on, but also not duplicate everything that's everywhere else and drag on too long today. So, that being said, I'll get into the update here. And to start, what I have on a screen here is just this map summarizing where the flow front happens to be right now at 12:30 p.m. today, so not quite 5 hours ago. Compared to the highway, this is a distance of about 3.6 miles still. And over the course of the day, the flow has been moving at 0.02 miles per hour. Overnight, the flow did surge forward a bit, was moving at 0.08 miles an hour at that point in time. So if you think of the way the outflows move, they kind of move onto the flat, they build up height, and then they surge forward again. And that means the rates are variable from time to time, and really it's the overall rate that is probably more indicative than any incremental moment in time rate. In any case, the calculations of the modeling suggest that the fastest that this flow could reach the Saddle Road, also known as Daniel K Inouye Highway, would be about 2 days. And that would be if it keeps it all together and moves all the way there without actually fanning out and slowing down. And if you look at the contours on the map here, you can see that really gets quite a bit flatter. The next contour is actually off the map up here, so that's how flat it is. So that's the summary of where the flow is, and compared to the Saddle Road, that's the main thing most people want to see. So if that's all you want to know, then there you go. But we will go through some more details here and start off with the most recent USGS updates, of which there was one this morning we'll cover. So 9:08 a.m. We'll just cover the changes. Everything else is fairly the same. Warning red. There are still 2 active fissures, Fissure 3 and Fissure 4. Fissure 4 has been lower volume than Fissure 3. Fissure 3 is putting out most of the lava, and that's feeding that largest flow that's 3.6 miles from the Saddle Road. If you note it in the summary of this morning, at 7 a.m. this morning, the flow was also still 3.6 miles from the Saddle Road. So it's really barely moved at all over the course of the day, at least the first half of the day today. And there is that rate of 0.08 miles per hour, 130 meters per hour over the last day. But as expected, they mentioned that the approach to a relatively flat area may cause those flows to slow down, spread out, and inflate. Forecasts indicate it may take 2 days for lava flows to reach Saddle Road. Fissure 4 is still active with lava flows moving to the northeast at 0.03 miles per hour, 50 meters per hour. Small lobe ease from Fissure 4 at a slower rate than the main lobe. And otherwise, volcanic gas plumes are lofting high and vertically into the atmosphere. Pele's hair, strands of volcanic glass, has been noted to be falling in the Saddle Road area. We'll show you some pictures of that. Otherwise, they say that seismic monitoring detects tremor in the location of the currently active fissures, suggesting magma is still being supplied, and activity is likely to continue as long as we see that signal. And just to reemphasize, no activity at the Summit Caldera or on a southwest rift, and there is no expectation that any of those areas will activate again. They're in a clear. That was the first update today. We had another one released just an hour ago, and that 4:10 p.m. release notes most of the same things. Here, advance of the largest flow slowed between 7 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. today to a rate of about 0.02 miles per hour, 24 meters per hour. As of 12:30 p.m. today, the flow front remained about 3.6 miles from the Daniel K Inouye Highway. Flows are reaching a relatively flat area and are beginning to slow down. As this happens, the lava flow will spread out and inflate. And they still indicate 2 days, even though they have a slower rate. They're probably trying to average those rates or look at the worst case possibility there. Otherwise, all the same information stated here. But I did want to also note that the USGS put out a press conference this morning. And in that press conference, they noted that the earthquake levels south of the eruption site have actually gone down overnight significantly. And to the point where they believe that that reduces the chances of any further movement of the vent downrift. That could still happen, but the chances are much reduced than before. So not totally out of the danger for the lower areas there, but it's looking positive in that sense. It looks like the flow may actually be settling into that Fissure 4 as the main vent for the course of the eruption. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, so USGS Volcanoes on Twitter has a lot of good information. We'll cover some of this as it comes up here. But there's a new insider we'll talk about. Pictures of the Pele's hair falling in the saddle. And so if you don't do Facebook, this is another way you could check out some of the offerings from USGS. Moving right along, Hawaii County has updated their information page to now include maps of the flow front and updates. Let me see, this is from earlier today. If I reload it, I might put up the new update as well. But it is taking a while, so maybe. All right, we'll move it on. The county map, the hazard map actually looks like this. So there is the 3 fissures, and the dots indicate different positions of the flow fronts at different times. So what we're interested in mostly is the area up here. And that main flow front that was noted, let's see if I can zoom it in here, was noted at 4:30 in the morning and then 7:30 in the morning, right in there. And the most recent USGS map that I just showed you guys puts that flow at the 7,000 foot elevation. So that newest dot would be right in here, more or less. So you can see that overnight, let me scroll this back up, you can see that overnight, between here and here, the flow surged forward, but it had a slow phase yesterday and looks like it's having another slow phase today. That's more or less how you could average it out, right? You can see it's maybe in a couple day cycle it's going that far and then go like that and eventually get to somewhere close to the road by that kind of pattern. All right, that's just the county map, and it looks like my browser is going a little slow. This is now showing some different lava flows on the map as well. But we can see those by coming back to this USGS map. Here's the zoomed out version. We were just zoomed into this area right in here at the start. So you see the summit caldera has been partially mapped down here, and you even need to scoot this up so you can see the bottom. So there's the caldera flows. See, they've been mapped by satellite, so there's just the artificial cutoff where they haven't been mapped over in this direction yet. And you see that spillover site right in here, those upper fissures, and the earlier flows from those fissures, all inactive in an area that's up in here. And the active fissures, fissure 3 and fissure 4, remaining right in this area right here. And those are the ones feeding the flows. That's the long flow that goes all the way to the north. And fissure 4 has also got 2 flows, one that is moving in a parallel direction, but not as fast and hasn't gotten nearly as far, and a much shorter one over here that's flowing to the east, east-southeast, that has gotten about that far. So that's the current status of where the flows actually are. And you can see that these are not really threatening anything compared to this one. That's the long one that's taking most of the lava and heading towards this bend in a highway up in here. So the reason that is significant is I'll pull up this Hawaii Department of Transportation Highways map. And this is a map that's showing traffic volume for the last year. Right? And so you can see this part of the saddle road right here. If I click on it, let's see if I can zoom this in. That Route 200 between those mile markers, this section right in here, on average, every day. So this is the annual average for, I believe it was last year. And there are a total of 3,100 vehicles that cross that road daily. Of those, you see there's almost 500 trucks per day. And so the impact that we're looking at here is if this highway is eventually closed. I should note it's still open today, and is a place where there is issue with people trying to go and view. This is the best area for viewing, but there is a hazard of the parking along the highway, which needs to be considered seriously. Having heard that there were at least 3 serious accidents last night on the highway. So yeah, the main impact is that anyone trying to travel across the island will no longer have this central route, having to go around to the north or to the south, right? And of course, that might impact access to the Mauna Kea Observatory as well, depending, and would have to come from one direction or the other, so long as access road is also not impacted there. So that's the main impact. Fortunately, there's no property or houses in the way. This mapping's been done with assistance by satellite. This is a product of the Earth Observatory of Singapore. Oh, once again, I gotta move this up so you can see the bottom there. Earth Observatory of Singapore product. And they are using satellites to map out these zones of change. And so you can see the increasing change, the reddest parts, that's the shape of that flow that we just saw right there. So I can compare that to this map you just saw. Well, saw in here. Zoom that again. That one, and this one, pretty similar, down to this cutoff of the satellite here on their mapping area. So awesome to see all these different agencies globally contributing what they can, especially with the satellite data, which is something that can be worked on from anywhere. And we also have some local community scientists, and this is an old USGS volunteer like me that worked with me, and named Kit Tincher. Kit put together this map showing not only in red the current progress of the flows, that's over here on the left, but also in colors these historic flows that have gone towards Hilo, right in this area, Hilo or Kaumana. So of the flows that have occurred that we have mapped here, you can see that our longest flow most closely matches this 1935 flow. That is this purplish one right in here. You can see it went towards the saddle and took that bend to the right down what is currently Saddle Road. So this flow looks like it may take a similar path to that. However, it's very near this boundary of the Puako inundation zone. That's the boundary right there. Puako on this side and Kaumana on this side, where anything that, if it can cross this line, it'll start flowing off in this direction. You can see this green flow of 1843 right next to the 35 flow came down a similar pathway, but actually took a different direction when it came down to this point. So there's still a little bit of ambiguity where this flow could go to spread out. One of the complicating factors is that when the slopes are steep, you can fairly certainly count on the lava taking that steepest path of descent. Once the ground gets flatter and it starts to inflate and spread out and create its own macrotopography in the area, then anything's fair game. It could start going any direction. This is something we saw with the flow forecasts around Kapoho in 2018. When it hits that flat ground, you really have some ambiguity. It could take some different directions, and we just have to wait and see what happens there. So that's what where the flow is facing. Maybe I can come back to real quick to this map and point out on here this darker gray zone. This is a Maunaloa training area, military base, and the flow is now actually in that corner of that area. It appears like it's going to cut through the corner of it and not impact anything as far as our facilities. So just to note that, we'll come back to this a little bit later. But back to our historical flows there. We talked about these 35 flow and 43 flow. I also want to point out on here the 1984 flow. The 84 flow is this green one right here. It kind of goes off the map in that direction right there. And it's sourced from its vents were actually right in here. The final vents that went towards Hilo Town. They did have some earlier vents that were up in here in this area as well, but it migrated down. So to make this a little easier to see, this is once again that map of the 84 eruption, colored by phases. And you can see its first phase was a summit, and actually a southwest of the caldera, but within a summit also, fissure and flow that put lava in that area towards Kona, similar to what we had. A very similar pattern to what we had in 2022, and followed by fissures in the upper northeast rift. This is that zone marked B, and these put out short flows, and then they had zone C right here, which put out a small flow. What happened in 84 is that after this zone C formed, it then migrated, after a break of maybe 12 hours, migrated further to this zone D. And right in here, that's the vent that finally sent flows towards Hilo that then stalled out and also down this side of the rift zone. Now, to compare this, I thought I would bring up my Google Earth here. And what I have on here is some of the firm's data. So little fire symbols are showing where the satellite's detecting this heat. So this is more or less where this flow is. It's not exact, obviously, but it's going to be good enough for our purposes here today. So what you can see is that the 84 flow was that lower down in elevation on a rift zone. And by doing so, it avoided most of this flat area. It actually caught this rift zone pathway and headed more to the northeast. So you can see just from this, automatically, our flow is heading in more of a north direction rather than northeast. And it's going to, if it happens to go in the same ultimate direction, it has to go up and take the long way around to get there, right? So that's why we're not as concerned as we were in 84 when this flow was issuing from a lower elevation vent and heading in a direction straight towards town. So that could happen eventually if this flow lasts long enough, puts out enough volume and all those factors, doesn't spread itself out enough. But this is a different beast than a 84 eruption because we never got this later phase of where it migrated downrift. Right, and that's what we've been waiting for to see what actually happens. That's what we could see still affect eruption if it were to occur. But the fact that USGS stating that there are earthquakes decreasing in the area over here might indicate that the fissures are less likely to move is a positive development there. So that is the context of the 84 eruption. I did want to say a couple other things about the 84 eruption. I'm going to show you a couple graphs real quick. This is on the left elevation in meters of the lowest lava front in 1984. So on the bottom here, this is the end of March and the beginning of April. These are the 20 days of eruption right there. So the original elevation was up around 10,000 feet as well. And you can see that it flowed downhill as events migrated downhill, and it reached down to, this is in meters, so about 3.2 factor to convert it to feet. You're looking at 6,500 feet in here. This is below where we're currently at 7,000, somewhere in the range right in here. That flow went, migrated down rift and then traveled further down, and once again, or so that's when it actually jumped its bank and started forming parallel channels that spread the flow out and prevented that ultimate flow into Hilo. So just to know what to expect if that flow does keep going for a while, for several days without breaking out or without flattening and spreading and that kind of thing, it could come down to some elevation in that range of 4,000, 3,000 feet or so. Obviously, it's got to take a much longer path to get there, as we just mentioned. But that would be about the historical pattern of where you'd expect it to start breaking out of its channel and no longer being a single contained flow towards town. Right, the flow of 1880-81 that made it into Hilo took 9 months to do that because it had that exact pattern, and eventually that's what led it into town. That flow is this purple one right in here. So from a similar location, slightly downrift also, but you can see how the further downrift you get, the more direct these pathways are as opposed to where we are now. It really does force that circuitous path. So yeah, that 1880-81 flow had to last for a long time to actually get in there. So one last thing to mention, this is from that same paper, but I should mention this is from the paper by Lipman and Banks, 1987, and professional paper 1350 from the USGS. This is that 75-year anniversary of the Volcano Observatory issue. And what I'm showing you guys here on the left is it's labeled total phenocryst and volume percent. What this means, phenocryst is a fancy word for a crystal that's visible within the lava. And so percent of the volume of lava that is crystals is another way to think of this, right? And once again on the bottom we have time, beginning of the eruption, end of the eruption over here, and you can't see these points very well. You can see that there's kind of a steep increase and a more shallow increase here. And by the end, by 20 days in, we are roughly 30% of the volume of the lava flow is crystals. So that's detailed in this paper that I'm not going to go into a lot today, but it has to do with the amount of gas that's mixed in the lava and how much is vented outwards and the heat of the lava coming out and other factors like that. But the bottom line is that you expect as time goes on that the flow actually clogs itself because it's starting to crystallize as it's going down the hill. The farther it goes, the more chance that has to happen as well. So it's not just the flatness of the ground that causes those flows to slow down and spread out and build up, but also the crystallinity that develops within them as well. Thought I'd mention it briefly here today. Nature is helping us on this, in fact. All right, so let's look at some other map products. I wanted to bring up this MODIS. This is the ModVolc website from University of Hawaii, and it's using MODIS data, which is a pair of satellites, and they're detecting volcanic eruptions in particular. So I know there are other tools out there, like the firms that we'll look at here shortly, but this one I like because it actually is a little bit better filtered. And so you can see here these areas of red where the detection is actually happening, and you can see within a caldera, and actually one dot over here, that could be the extent of that upper southwest rift connector area. It's actually still in a summit, so still within a summit, but spilling out towards that upper southwest rift. That could be the one dot of that flow right there. We've seen, I just wanted to show that in comparison because A lot of people are using firms, and normally when you load this up, it looks like this. No. Firms, there we go, like that. I wasn't patient enough there. Firms, by the way, the fire information for resource management system. And what we've noticed is that this detection system is picking up extra stuff. So you look at the southwest area here, there's quite a bunch of extra detections, and you see a much more dispersed detection in the northeast area here. One quick and easy thing you can do is, if you're looking at the firms, you can go here to where it says fires and hotspots are simple and time-based. If you click on time-based, I'll be patient this time, you'll see it actually colored with the reds for less than 1 day, and then 1 to 3 days, and going back, or 1 to 3 hours, and then going back to over 24 hours there. So it's actually showing you which areas are hotter, and that may help you filter through some of those bad detection days when maybe the hot plume is being detected as well. So in comparison, like this pale yellow color compared to the orange color doesn't seem nearly as accurate. The orange looks pretty good actually, but you see that even it's got some strays all the way out here. So that's what we'll say on the mapping today. One last map that I showed on USGS Twitter here, and this is a INSAR interferogram showing the formation of Maunaloa. And this is courtesy of JAXA, and I'm not sure what AK_ Alaska Satellite Facility here is hosting the data here. So this black area is where the satellite has not detected. So once again, this is the edge of the caldera right in there. This is that same satellite pass. If I zoom it in so you can see a little bit better, you can see these kind of rainbow patterns here. And the way that these work is the order actually matters. So without going through any tutorial, we can just see that this pattern over here indicates deflation, that magma left this area. And this pattern over here shows intrusion, inflation, where magma entered this area. So the magma essentially left here and went to right here. And that's as far as we see the signal so far through the 29th yesterday. If you were to see more of this signal further down a rift, you would get concerned that it wouldn't be more likely to spread. But all signs are pointing towards the focus of the eruption being here. Well, now that we've mentioned the INSAR, we will do a little bit more of the monitoring, looking at the earthquakes. I've mentioned the earthquakes before. So here are the earthquakes for the last day. As compared to yesterday, there's still a few, but not nearly as many in this area. Still getting some under the summit, and that upper southwest part of the summit, and some to the northwest, and there's one on Kilauea as well. But I go up here to the settings and I put this back to, let's put it to 7 days. I can't do 2 days, unfortunately, but see what 7 days pops up for us, and we'll see a bigger population through here. So compare the yellows to the oranges in this zone right in here, and that's what the USGS is talking about as far as magma in the rift in this area pushing sideways. You know, if it's pushing sideways more and causing more earthquakes, that means that maybe it can push its way further down. But with the less earthquakes, let's put it back. With these lower number of earthquakes, then it suggests that it's not doing that, right? That it seems to be more stable than yesterday in this Fissure 3 area right in here. Since we often go through the monitoring data, I wanted to show this in some different ways. Here is a plot of earthquakes over the last month and earthquakes per day. So the eruption actually begins in here, and this is the first day following the eruption. As you can see, those high earthquake counts that you saw on the map I just put up. And going back down, and here we are today, and we haven't quite finished the day, but we're going to end up quite a bit lower than either of the last 2 days here. So that's what it looks like visually. Looking at the last year, there is that most recent spike right over here from the eruption, and that buildup that we've had over the course of the year. In the last 5 years, this overall buildup for the past few months here, and over the last 5 years, you can see this ramped up gradually, surged, and then relaxed, and then finally here come to the eruption. So there's a pattern for the 1 week of earthquakes. I'm going to move quickly through these for the last month overall of all the earthquakes building up to this, and including the eruption itself. And let's look at the tilt here. So there is a tilt signal of the ground moving, being pressurized and then released. And so that's the normal signal we see, and that's really blown out in its scale, so we can't really tell more than that on here. But we actually have enough time go by now that we can look at the Summit GPS, and here's our distance between those stations, and you can see a big jump happening right here. A little bit of a jump up in a summit and then down. Maybe you can see that unless I zoom it in more, right? But just like we saw that pattern of inflation and then deflation from the INSAR, there is that inflation and deflation. The INSAR is picking up the net change, which is that. And that about sums it up. There is a five-year plot showing how much it's really moved compared to the last 5 years. So that is all the monitoring that we'll put in today. We want to turn to this question of the booms that were heard this morning. It was heard across the whole island, and according to the USGS, who put up this data evidence, that was a jet, not Maunaloa. And you can see this because the signal is coming in dispersed in these different areas, and you can see here seismic signal recorded an air-coupled ground wave, and infrasound array recorded sound in the air. So this is the seismic signal here, and this is the infrasound signal down here at the bottom. So that's not all we have to go on. We did have a follow-up by Tom Wojcinski and Hawaii Tracker, and here he says he contacted the 154th Fighter Wing Public Affairs Office at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, and they would not confirm a specific supersonic event, but it did include the following press release about a joint exercise with Australia called Pacific Edge, which is ongoing now. And as far as the Department of Defense operates 3 overwater ranges directly to the west of the Big Island, and supersonic aircraft within those ranges were most likely the cause of the sonic booms. So we're having some multiple sources coming in, chiming in on this. There was a lot of speculation since the lava flow was in Pohakuloa training area that maybe there was any kind of unexploded ordnance. We've checked with Pohakuloa area. This is not an area that has any unexploded ordnance. They in fact have put out a statement, and here's what it says. There's no evacuation order at this time for U.S. Army garrison at PTA, and we continue to closely monitor the Maunaloa eruption. We're taking necessary precautions to ensure the safety of all who work on post and safeguard critical assets. Contrary to claims on social media, lava flow has not reached the cantonment area. That's where they're bombarding. However, lava has breached the remote training area in the most southeastern area of PTA and taken out a portion of a fence. When safe, the fence will be fixed. Also, there is no training at this time, so the lava boom Herman community did not come from PTA. There remains no immediate threat to PTA personnel. Pele's hair is present, but sulfur dioxide levels are at a green level. So shifting gears here a little bit, but still within a PTA release. PTA Fire and Emergency Services has responded to 3 serious motor vehicle accidents on Saddle Road DKI Highway since eruption as part of the mutual aid agreement with Hawaii County. As a reminder, the county has issued an alert urging drivers to not pull over along the road. Parking is prohibited, and they are issuing citations. So that is the PTA release there.
Yeah. Well, test my mic real quick, see if it's working before I talk, really. How does it sound, chat? It's coming in all right?
It's all right. Yeah, we'll let you know.
All right. Yeah, so this whole thing, it was trying to figure out what the boom was, right? It was like a mystery search at first. It was that USGS that out. One question that I was getting is, I would choppy still. Let me play back.
Yeah, a little choppy still.
It'll work. All right. So trying to figure out what the boom was, and the question is why would USGS, why would they post about it? Right. And the thing about USGS is when they're as gemologists, they're constantly trying to they're constantly accommodating and accounting for military and things along those lines, and trying to weed out the noise, basically all the different signals that they may be having. So the that USGS puts it on is able to identify it makes full sense. But it kind of does feel like a military aircraft. We have heard sonic booms before out here, and usually my mind goes do it that out of out of Wahoo, and probably something along the lines of an F-22. But who knows? That's just what it's been in the past. Yeah, I do not know. So I will end it there and let take over.
Yeah. So if you couldn't hear Danny, he was saying F-22s is a possible candidate for that kind of boom. Yeah, mahalo, Dane, for that. Sorry, we can't hear you quite as well as we'd like. I'm not sure what's going on there, but we better just keep going here, I guess, huh? So they mentioned viewing. Viewing is a important thing for everyone who's here. Everyone wants to go and get a view of this while it's still around, and I just wanted to show the national park here has updated their webpage for eruption viewing. 2 eruptions, 2 volcanoes, so not only can you see this from the saddle side, but there are also views from the national park side where you can, for the first time since 1984, which didn't last as long in 84, right? It only lasted let's say a matter of days in 84, and so we're still in that same range. But previous to that, I want to say it was 1919 that the volcanoes were. So it's really a rare thing to see, and there you see it, Kilauea, Maunaloa, both together, and views from the national park. They've updated their viewing map for here as well, so you guys can check that out, and that's a good place if you're visiting to see both. Of course, you can't see the flow directly from this side, you just see the glow over that skyline in the upper Fissure area. So we have heard that the county is working on a viewing area with their partners in the state and federal. So we expect an announcement at any point in time if it hasn't come already, and we'll share that as soon as we can. So switching now to the gas, and I will preempt us by saying we're gonna do a special standalone broadcast on this tomorrow with the creators of this VOG mapping site and researchers from USGS affiliation and abroad talking about the gas and what we're seeing in the level. So just to start off, here is the VOG mapping page, and seems like it's looked a little different when I loaded it, but there was a warning here at the top that said most of the VOG is actually being injected into that upper atmosphere, and so the conditions seen here don't necessarily reflect what you see on the ground. It looks like they may be making adjustments to the model on the fly here, so you're seeing the pattern look a little bit different over time. But clearly the VOG is flying in the air above all the way to Oahu. May not be reaching ground levels where it can be detected or measured by any of those instruments, right? So that's the forecast, and for comparison, once again, we'll go to the DOH map. See if I can get this to actually show us some data as usual. Some of the websites don't like to live in tabs. Causes this to happen sometimes. Seems like today my loading speed is a little slow with the stream, so appreciate your patience. DOH air quality data, here it is. And if you look quickly, everything's in the green. That's the bottom line there. Move over to purple air, and it also showing everything in the green. So at ground level, everything looks to be okay still. And since we just mentioned viewing in National Park, the National Park has been in the green also all day on the ground. So you're worried about that. However, if we look at a further afield, let's look at windy.com, and we're looking at the SO2 layer in Windy. There is our island chain, and you can see that the SO2 going into the upper atmosphere from our eruption is actually blown all the way to the continent. It's crossed Baja, it's crossed Mexico, northern part of Mexico, and is entering Arizona and New Mexico, actually. I can believe that. Still in the upper atmosphere. I'm not sure if that's having any localized impact there, but thought it was interesting to point out the widespread effect of this gas plume, how far it's traveling. So let's move on from there and let's look at webcams. Current webcams from the USGS. Scroll this all the way up. Here's our M5 camera. That's showing the actual, this is Fissure 3 right in here, and then Fissure 4 looks like it's been waning a lot throughout the day, but it's reportedly still active by the USGS. It would be back in here. You can't see it on a camera anymore, but it could still be putting out lava into the flow. M6 camera looking uprift, just shows that eruption site. M4 looking downrift, showing nothing. Nothing's happening downrift. This is here in case the fissures were to move downrift, showing nothing right now. From the volcano side, you're seeing some clouds at present coming in. And otherwise, on Mauna Kea, there's a new camera, the MK2 camera. This is very similar to the NK1 camera, which is this one, but it's zoomed in quite a bit more. So right now, probably zoomed into this area right in here. We can actually, if you go back to this MK camera, you can see the technicians working on installing that other webcam. Looks like they installed it on this mast probably, and that's what we get in this view right in here. So just so you can see what that looks like in better conditions, here is a view of that same camera at 6 o'clock this morning. See it zoomed in, how much better you can see the flow. You can place a monitor, and there is that flow front as it was, and hasn't moved a whole lot since. And in comparison, 6 o'clock this morning from the MK camera. So that's the wide angle view, and now we have that zoomed in version as well. So that's the main cameras we have to see. I could keep going down here, but everything else is not really showing us that much. Everything else is quiet. So moving on to a couple of pictures here. I did mention Pele's hair coming from Eruption. That's pictured here. It's probably hard to see, but I'll outline. There's a strand of hair. This is the longest one right here that seems to go like this, all the way around, like a piece of spun glass or like a cotton candy, right? The lava is bubbling and it's getting pulled and stretched out in midair, and that's causing its filaments to break apart and get wafted in that rising plume and then get dispersed downwind. And USGS is reporting finding these over near Pu'uhuluhulu, which is many miles away. They're saying in a range of 5 miles away, perhaps. So possibly up to 10 miles away. And so that's some of the volcanic product that's being deposited. And that's one view of it. There's another picture I want to show you guys. Looks like it's collected on a paper towel. And it has a centimeter ruler for scale here. So you can see many of these strands of Pele's hair, but also some other little particles that are not quite so linear there. That's why it's being recommended that if you are in that area and you want to protect yourself against breathing any of this stuff, the same kind of mask that we used for COVID is useful for this particulate matter as well. That mask won't filter SO2 if it was on the ground, but as we just showed you guys, there's not a whole lot of that on the ground, and so those regular masks everyone's been using, most people have been using, would be useful here for particulate matter as well. So one last one I wanted to share, and this is a photograph of that flow front yesterday. And I'm showing this because you can see a person standing here to the side, and you can see at the very, very front edge of the flow, that's a little bit taller than a person there, maybe a couple meters or so. You see it gets thicker farther upslope, so you're not getting a full cross-section all the way up. But in case you were wondering what it would be like to be close to this flow in the front of it, the front at this point in time was fairly short. And as I mentioned before, as lava feeds from behind, if the front kind of is stuck, then this flow could build up to a greater height, something like this, and then could surge forward and then come back down to this height again. And that's how these flows will build up and surge forward earlier. So that is the whole of what I wanted to share with you guys today. We can certainly take a few questions here.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and jump in and see how it's. Just wanted to announce two things. One, we're going to be trying to do some live streams tomorrow. One is with Eugenia Ilinsky. She is a volcanologist from Leeds that specializes in gas emissions. We're going to be talking about the volcanic gas, from this eruption, and also some of the difficulties that's been encountered in modeling the gas. Right. So, as trying to forecast the gases, some of the difficulties in that. Again, for any issues, try to kill the camera, help it out a little bit. Let me turn it up a little. All right. So the other one is we're going to be trying to have from the training area. We're going to try to have Lieutenant Colonel Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, so I hear what you're trying to say, and yeah, he mentioned we'll have a interview with Evgenia Lyanskaya, the gas volcanologist. That would be, I think, in the late morning, and in the afternoon, the Lieutenant Commander Kevin Cronin, or sorry, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Cronin, commander of the PTA, will also come on and talk to us about the flow through PTA tomorrow. So those are two things coming up. Go ahead, Dane. Try again.
No, that actually got there. So thank you for that, Phil. Guys, any issues we've been having, I know we've been having issues on Facebook. Apologies there. We'll be trying to get it a little bit more stable for next week. But
right.
we do have a couple questions if you want to do those. And
Sure,
maybe
yeah.
restate them.
Yes, of course.
All right. Yan Zhao donated $20 and is magma the same type as the other volcano? So Kilauea. I've been watching your videos for the last few days.
Yeah, so question from Yan Zhao for with super chat of 1999. Magma the same type as the other volcano, presumably Kilauea. Generally, in a grand order of things, yes, it's the same general kind of magma. It does have very small chemical differences because the magma takes a different path through the crust of the Earth. It picks up different trace elements along the way. So it has a unique chemical fingerprint that pins it as being a Maunaloa lava compared to a Kilauea lava. But on a bulk, to most people, it's basically the same thing. And if you're looking at it in your hand or under a microscope, for the most part, you can't tell. You have to do that chemical analysis to really pull that out. Yeah, thanks for the question.
All right. Joe, current case, and how close will lava to Saddle Row before they shut it down?
Joe Pippo asks, at the current pace and volume, how close will lava flow get to Saddle Road before they shut it down? We're not sure exactly how close it'll have to get before they shut it down, but you'd imagine it has to be getting fairly close to where they think that the average flow rate would actually get it there within some short amount of time, right? And so right now, 2 days is like the fastest possible. But if you take the rate from most of today, that's a slower rate, then you certainly would expect it to take quite a bit longer than that. So it's kind of a wait and see thing. We're not really sure exactly. It depends really on the flow rate. And really, I don't know. It's a good question, but we'll have to look into that further as well.
All right. Richard, go ahead. If you want to just take it, I'll drop you the questions in.
Okay, yeah. So I do see a super chat from Josh Averill for $50. Mahalo, Josh. We appreciate that. And another question from Richard Leopold. Is there any record, historical or geological, of an explosive eruption from Maunaloa? So there are deposits of explosive eruptions at the very summit rim of Maunaloa. They seem like they're very localized. They don't go very much beyond that summit caldera wall, really, right? Like it's all within a summit region and close to the wall. So it seems like there are certain eruptions that come up within the caldera, and we've looked into this a little bit and talked. We have a stream. I don't know if we ever clipped it or not, but we talked about different ice caves in Maunaloa, how there are ice caves up there, and potentially there are little perched pockets of groundwater that could be icy as well. And if the lava comes across one of those, you could have a small localized explosion that throws that debris up onto the rim. So that's most of it. There is one area of debris that seems to be of older age and is farther away down in the Idaho Ranch, I want to say, area. No, not right. In any case, it's further down the slope, and that particular case does suggest that you could have a fairly big explosion that projects things out at a low angle that can travel a couple miles, maybe something like that. So it's still fairly high up the slope. Wouldn't be affecting people, but there can be explosions. You would think that that would happen at the beginning of the eruption. So when a fissure was coming up through the caldera initially on day one, if there had been groundwater to interact there, that's when you would have had your explosions. By now, we would not expect any further explosions because the magma has established a path up and through the volcano and out as lava. So that's the long and short of it there. So I see another question here from Christina Anderson. Has the lava left the southwest rift zone? Is it still hanging around underground, or has it all drained to the northeast? So I wonder if I can, let me pull up Google Earth here and let me take off some of the stuff that's on here. zoom in here. And maybe you can see from this map, if I zoom in enough, there's actually a whole other crack that runs right through here. This is actually the edge of that greater caldera of the summit of Maunaloa. So let me zoom it back out so you can tell that's way over here. And so the actual summit area of the volcano is a big area that's more like that, right? So we saw earthquakes occurring and still have been in this upper area of the southwest rift, but it's actually across the summit boundary in the summit region right through here. The only reason I draw this caldera line is, if you look at Kilauea, we see how there's a crater inside of another crater inside of another crater. It's a similar thing on Maunaloa, but this outermost one isn't sunk down very much. It's just a tiny bit exposed right through here, right? So when magma is underground here and even over here, it's all underground at the summit. This is all the summit reservoir. So the magma could have gone into the southwest rift this direction over here, but it seems to not have done that. And so in fact, I would suggest that lava never actually entered the southwest rift zone. It was up here close to it in the summit region, in that connector area. It could have gone that way. It found it easier to actually go the other way. Or not, right? So this indicates some kind of obstruction here that prevented that from happening, and a lesser obstruction in this northern area up here. So the lava then, if I can rephrase the question, if the lava that was in this area is then part of the summit region, has the lava left the summit and entered and journeyed to the northeast? And that's what the InStar image was telling us, that yes, magma has left this summit area, likely all the way from here, and it has all gone to the northeast. To kind of cut to the chase there, Christina, to your question, yeah, ultimately the answer is yes. Once I get past all that jargon and terminology, that's been floating around, just trying to make it clear for everybody. All right, so I see one last question here from Barbell88 with a Canadian dollars 279 donation. How long is the average fissure elevation on the northeast rift? How low is average fissure elevation on a northeast rift? Well, average is hard to say. Let me come back to, I'm going to find Kit's map again on here. Map. So you can see that there are some vents down here, and I want to say this is the 8,000, 7,500 foot range, somewhere in there. And we're up here at 10,000 or so, right? So you can see a lot of the flows actually erupt in this upper region above 10,000 feet. Some do go down further, but ultimately the northeast rift zone of Maunaloa, that should continue in this direction and have more flows issuing from down here, is actually somewhat kept closed by Mauna Kea, which sits off in this direction, and Kilauea, which sits off in that direction down there. So those two act to essentially pinch this furthest part of the northeast rift zone, so it erupts a lot less frequently. And for that reason, you have more eruptions historically in this upper area right here. So my best guess, looking at this map, is I would guess the average is somewhere close to where we are right here, right? If you go consider it being, let's say it goes from here to here, maybe somewhere in there, maybe a little bit lower, would be the average elevation fissure in Northeast Rift. A good question. Okay, so maybe this is the last one here by Sean Gurley. Why does magma always come up the middle of the volcano for thousands and thousands of years if there's a huge pathway going down that can't obstruct? Or is there a huge pathway going down that can't obstruct? It's a matter of buoyancy, really. That's the hot magma is wanting to come up from below, and it's part of that giant tectonic system of the entire Earth. So it seems like on a small scale, you're just like adding stuff, and that can't work out long term by laws of physics. But you got to take the whole Earth as a whole into account, and then there are areas where crust is recycled back into the mantle, and areas where the mantle is coming back out as eruption. So it kind of all mass balances in the end. But ultimately, it's because the magma is hot and buoyant, is why it's coming up from deep down. Once it comes to the very shallowest parts of the volcano, that's about half mile down or so, when it actually makes that crack and comes towards the surface. What's happening then is it's starting to nucleate bubbles of gas inside the magma, and those gas bubbles, as they form, they make the magma even frothier and lighter and less dense, and so that causes magma to rise up, and the bubbles expand, and they rise more, and they expand more, and they rise more, and they expand. Eventually, it's a runaway process. It's like having a bottle of champagne or soda or pop or whatever you like to call it, and trying to crack that bottle or can. You can't just barely open a bottle of champagne. Either you do or you don't. Once you pop that cork, all the gas has a chance to nucleate and shoot out of there, and it brings the liquid with it, and that's what shoots the liquid out, and that's an eruption in the case of champagne. Same thing here. It's really all about getting the gas out when you get to that last stage of eruption. Magma's coming up, the gas is in it, the gas has to escape out and upwards, and it's bringing the lava with it. And then the lava, once it escapes, separates from the gas, falls back to Earth, and then flows downhill. And that's what we're basically dealing with. It's almost like I've joked before, it's like burping a baby. You just got to get the gas out, and whatever the volcano's got to do to accomplish that, that's how it's gonna behave. So maybe a little simplistic there, but that's ultimately why it's coming up from deep down, is that buoyancy heat. And then and of course the density, right? There's a density difference there. And then at the very shallowest regions, it's because of the gas. So I think that may be enough. We're coming close to the 1 hour mark here, Dane. Maybe we can wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to try to say here before we sign off? Still with me?
Yeah, we'll get this figured out for next time. Apologies for the tech issues today.
All right, thanks, Dane.
For me.
All right, guys. So unless something drastic changes, we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. And it seems like since there is no threat to people right now, it's really just a highway, and even that, the flow is just creeping towards it at the current pace, and it might still be a couple of days out. We're not expecting anything urgent to come up, and so we'll continue coverage as we have been, but we won't do 5 updates in one day unless we really see the hazard and the concern of people here. We'll try to bring you those extra interviews as usual, of course, as we can, and keep you guys apprised of all the different facets of this eruption. So mahalo all you guys who've contributed, mahalo all you guys who are hitting us up in all our different channels. Until tomorrow, from HawaiiTracker.com, he's Dane DuPont, off camera, and I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everyone.